It's been a hectic summer, so I'm looking forward to a new autumn term back here in the shed, being nice and productive. There's some really fascinating stuff that I've got coming up as a composer, alongside some of the projects I mentioned to you earlier in the year. I haven't done a kind of a answering questions raised in the comments section. I thought it would be good to start a new term, catching up on some of the questions that have been raised, particularly with some purchasing options that I think we face at the moment that I think are important to address. I have to say, though, of all of the questions coming up on the comments, the most kind of consistent one is concerns for my health. Someone said, Christian, if you're not careful, you're going to have a hearty. I think I have to kind of stress that the vlogs are rapidly cut together to give a sense of pace and energy and enthusiasm. They by no means represent my actual day. The vlog that I posted about going to see Matthew in Cambridge, it appears that that happened over a period of 48 hours. It was in fact 2 weeks. It was about 3 or 4 vlogs that I simply failed to get enough material for. So I constructed a narrative within a kind of 10-minute piece. I find that social media has a brilliant knack at making us feel incredibly inferior, whether it be I'm not busy enough, I'm not successful enough, but also I'm not running enough, I'm not eating enough quinoa. For me, it's just all about balance. And if you start veering off that path and not looking after yourself, just make sure you recenter yourself from time to time. I think it's okay to just try and not, in your own mind's eye, feel that you're underachieving because compared to that vlog or that Instagram account, your life doesn't shape up. My life is not like my vlogs. A lot of my life is spent being quite grumpy with children, and I obviously don't show that here. If I had one little kind of tip of the week for just, again, a little kind of recenter that you can do is if you have any beverage dispensers in your studio, a coffee maker, a kettle, or say a fridge with beer or water in, whatever it is, I would say remove them. This cup of coffee was made in the main house, and I go into the main house to wee, poo, eat, and boil up a brew about 5 or 6 times a day. And that connection with my wife, my family, and just to get me away from this horrific workbench, I think is a positive thing to do. So that's my health tip of the week. And thank you to the chap who said they thought I was going to have a hearty. I have frequent checkups and I'm doing okay. And okay is good enough for me now, my position in my life. Someone has asked, do I still bake? How about a baking video? I don't really bake still. You can't really transfer baking on an industrial level. So yes, I can probably, if asked, bake some bread, but there would have to be 200 or 300 people to serve because I only know it in that kind of quantity. However, linked below is a brilliant baking video from the amazing channel Binging with Babish. If you're not subscribed, I really would recommend it. And you will notice that my Modular Mondays, there is definitely a spirit of Binging with Babish that I've incorporated into that format. Stephen Schmidt commented, first of all, I love the Labs cellos. Thank you very much. But it's brought up a question. Is there a way to hack a pitch bend using orchestral samples? I want to get the feeling of a slow rise or fall in pitch using strings, but I'm not really sure how to do it. Okay, I think there's 2 issues here. Firstly, pitch bend with strings, it just doesn't sound real. It just instantly sounds like a synth, which I have 2 good friends, Andy Gray and Charlie Klauser, actually like that effect. It has a kind of hybrid thing. Now, for some reason, we disable the pitch bend on a lot of our stuff. So one thing you can do is resample and engage the pitch bend on contact. I will actually ask the production guys why we disable the pitch bend. There is a reason for it, I believe. And the reason why synths can't imitate this is actually, this is the point at which a section will go out of tune with itself, because there will be kind of microtonal shifts that they can't all kind of match exactly. So Albion 4 has a great collection of slides, and what I tend to do is use a combination of sampled slides and, no surprises here, a combination of pitch plugins. AU Pitch is a free one if you're using Macs, and I automate, maybe have 2 different string sounds, and I will automate slides, but make sure that the automation isn't identical and you kind of can engineer that rub a little bit. So that would be my advice there. Whilst we're on the subject of labs, Brian Walls said, will your modular experiments make it into the labs? I don't know, but if they were, what would you guys like to hear? Now, I don't think you can imitate the experience of a modular setup within a sample playback plugin. So how would we like to embrace the modular setup, combine it with the wonders of sampling within the kind of realm of labs, being lean and clean. So for me, if I were to make a labs modular plugin, it would probably be my 10 favorite sounds. So for you, what would those kind of things be? Basses, leads, arpeggiatable kind of stuff. I guess the piano going through clouds would be an interesting thing to see how that came out. Talking of which, someone asked me what mics I use to record the piano. I'm very lucky to have a pair of M150s Neumanns, which I think with the mic shootout that I did linked below, I think possibly is the best all-rounder. This is my favourite mic now, the U67, but I think it's the best mic for lyrical, vocal stuff. The M150s, I think, are the best all-rounders, but they're incredibly expensive. So if I were to recommend a kind of mid-range, it would be a 414. Pair of those matched if possible. Grebit has asked, Christian, can you explain why at the HQ you have so much French butter in your fridge? I have asked on your behalf and no one has a clue. It sounds like some erroneous Waitrose order that has never kind of been explained. A mystery. This wasn't so much of a question, but more of a comment. Carrie Eddy said, I'm a female musician, so it's you. You're the one. It's just ridiculous how my kind of gender stats are faring up. They're just getting worse and worse and worse. I think I'm down to 0.4%. Very disappointing, particularly a father of 2 girls. I'm a female musician who's a newbie in the world of composition. I'm self-taught and have a very small and very simple setup, but I love oohing and ahhing over the setups in your videos. One day, I'd love to have access to Orchestral plugins. Thanks for continuing to inspire me. Kerry, all I can say is all of this stuff, it just is not important. And that includes not just what I've got on show here, but what's in all of these kind of terabytes of hard drives. You're in a position to create truly original music with the resources around you, whether that be going to a junk shop and buying some children's toys to sample, or indeed getting some of our free samples, which are purposely designed to be... No, I'm not going to go on the sales pitch. I just think that you are in a position to make the most interesting music you may make in your entire career. Because you are starved of resources, you will become more resourceful. And I'm sorry, channel, for saying that yet again, but I would urge you not to wait until you're stacked up to the hilt with orchestral samples or outboard kit. Get in there and get creative with the setup that you have. It is not impeding your progress one tiny bit. Now, a lot of you have been asking whether I'm going to plump for a MacBook Pro. In fact, someone quite specifically asked, do I find that this thing really struggles when doing big orchestral sessions on the move? It's 15-inch 2017, 3.1 gigahertz Intel Core i7, 16 gigabytes of RAM. And I can't get this one to fall down, really. I've had it chug a little bit maybe on some of the slightly more time stretchy automated stuff, but when working on Trauma, which I did pretty much wholly on this rig, where I really notice the difference between, say, something like this and an iMac Pro is actually my video editing. I shoot everything on 4K. This will play back 4K, but it will be really jerky, so I have to create proxies within Premiere Pro. What's very interesting is this other MacBook Pro, which I bought in the States when this went walkabout. I left it in Heathrow Airport, but gracefully it was returned. This one really isn't up to scratch, which is why I just use it to record my voiceovers on. So this one is a 2.9 gigahertz, it's again 16 gigabytes of RAM, and it's a 2016 15-inch. And it simply, for me anyway, I don't know if it's a rogue unit, but it cannot handle 4K whatsoever. So it's amazing how that slight difference seems to be profound in its usability. So switching to the new MacBook, naturally, when something like this comes out, I try and find excuses to do it. But I think that there is an issue at the heart of a MacBook, and that is the aesthetics versus it being a real, potentially, a machine for kind of tech marines who are on the move, for people who want to edit 4K video, for people who want to do crazy stuff, in Costa Coffees or Starbucks all around the world. I think that we would happily sacrifice the aesthetic, but I think this is the internal battle that you can kind of feel with Mac, that it needs to be this bit of beauty. So the reason why I'm not going to switch to the new MacBook Pro is there is a throttling that happens in order to stop there being horrendous amounts of fan noise, in order for the thing not to overheat. It simply won't let you get out of the power, the grunt that it has under the hood that I think that you would expect. So from what I've seen, I've looked at loads of tech reviews. The new MacBook Pros compared to these will give you about a 15% improvement in performance, which for me just isn't worth that price. Reasons to go for the new MacBook Pro as opposed to this. The one thing I would say is this keyboard is just awful. I'm constantly having complaints on trains that my keyboard is too loud, and I'm not particularly a hammerer. I've had 3 of these. So I've got 2. One died, and I had to get it replaced by Apple. The keyboards, occasionally, letters will just cease to work for a week. So currently on this one, the spacebar doesn't work, and I know that this is well reported. They're really having difficulties with them. But that, for me, is not reason enough to spend the amount that I would need to spend to upgrade to the latest MacBook Pro. And also, at the heart of it, it's not like they've improved the keyboard on that one. They've fixed, for me, what is a fundamental design flaw. The other problem that I'm really having with this MacBook Pro, which I do love, I mean, I use this more than any other bit of tech. I absolutely cane it. And I don't know if you're experiencing this, is the USB-C ports. I find after a while, the metal tends to wear down, so the contact isn't as kind of flush, isn't as tight. And what I'm finding is I'm constantly crashing my editing software, my music software, with drives falling off, which is incredibly frustrating. You know, it's not something that can be replaced because these are kind of laser etched. So I don't know if they've improved that on the new MacBook Pro, and I suspect only time will tell, as it has done with these. So in summary, I'm not going to be switching up. I think a 15% improvement in performance is not worth the cost of getting a new one. Would I recommend the new ones over this one? Yes, just for the keyboard alone. A lot of people have been saying, you know, when am I going to do a more in-depth thing about the iMac Pro? Well, I'm still working on it. The thing is, I keep on doing experiments, and people are suggesting that I should try 24 instances of Omnisphere and stuff, but I just can't get the thing to fall down. I think the iMac Pro is well beyond what we require doing what we do. With these, I've yet to experience a Pro Tools session with massive amounts of plugins and tracks. I've yet to see it fall down on one of these. These are built like brick shithouses. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Mac Mini technology that's in this, which were, in my mind, the best computers that Apple has ever made. And I believe the Mac Mini technology was, in fact, laptop technology. Because they've glued everything together, these things last. If I were to be honest, I would plump for the cylinder for now, and when the new Mac Pro comes out, I solidly think it's going to be a Mac Pro that's catering to facilities houses and is going to be way over-spec'd for what we require, which doesn't mean that graphics companies, video editors are not going to switch up to the new Mac Pro, but that'll be the point, that these cylinders come down massively in price, and I think that'll be an opportunity if you're thinking of moving up from an iMac or from a laptop onto a desktop unit. I really think quite highly of these cylinders. I think they're really quite good. Just so you know, the specs of this iMac Pro, which is what was recommended by Yellow Technology, it's the 3 gigahertz and it's got 128 gigabytes of memory in there. So it's the 2017 iMac Pro. I can't make it fall down, but I may go and buy myself a copy of Omnisphere and see if that'll do it. Chris Masser noticed that Paul is building a studio from the ground up. I think he's very, very excited about this, and has said, surely sounds like an opportunity for a vlog. All I can say is, Paul, if you're watching, I hope you're filming everything. I think people will find it absolutely fascinating to see from a master who has built so many home studios how you would build it from the ground up. I'd certainly be fascinated and probably a little bit jealous. Steve Steele has said, do you not like running a Vienna Ensemble Pro host/server environment? The iMac Pro plus the 2013 Mac Pro as a VE Pro slave would be very nice. Yes, it would be, but for me, it would be a backward step. What is amazing about having self-contained environments whereby everything is loaded into the DAW is I can switch between rigs, which for me is like the golden goose. So it's very important that I can work with directors down south in London. So all I need to do is pull my drives out, insert it in the computer down in London, and provided I haven't used any plugins that aren't on that computer down in London, it'll just simply come up. And for me, after 20 years of trying to duplicate rigs and synchronize rigs, this is like just absolutely a fundamental quality of life thing. And it basically means I can switch between working on the train back towards Mr. Grunty here, back in the shed. So I would never ever go back to a slave environment. And I also found, even though I am building, I'm still doing it, the biggest orchestral template ever known to mankind, I did find that having a setup that was slightly detached, whereby you didn't really want to go into your slave because you didn't want to change that thing because then it would affect maybe another project that was using the same slave setup. I found that inevitably restricted my compositional chops, and I found that what I was doing was churning out the same old stuff, which is why I approach each project as a blank screen and keep it all within a single environment so I can use a combination of different Macs. I think a case in point for me is when I left this one in Heathrow, I could get this MacBook Pro, just walk into an Apple store, buy a new MacBook Pro, hey presto, put the drive in, and I'm back up and running. Joe Madday, you commented on the ambient wild track episode that I did, linked below. Sounds make great fodder for granular manipulation. I would like to know what you mean, and if anyone else has an idea of what this means, because it sounds really interesting, but I don't know, don't understand. I want to know more. As always, please keep the questions coming and the debate going. This is what makes this channel, this community. Thanks as always for watching. If you like what I do, hit like. If you haven't subscribed yet, well worth doing. And if you want to know when I next put a video up, just hit that little bell-shaped button, the notify button. See you next time.